Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Field Service Manager. In this week's training, I'm going to show you how to create this incredible Field Service Management application, complete with automated mapping and routing, work order management with dynamic filtering, a complete dashboard, and a whole lot more. I cannot wait. It's going to be incredible training, so let's get started. All right, let's start off with just a bit of a disclaimer. This is an instructional video, and all names, addresses, phone numbers, and items that might require sensitive personal information are fictitious data intended for demonstration use only. No real identifiable information is ever used in the making of these instructional videos. All right, thank you so much for joining me this week. I've got a really fantastic training, some things that I've absolutely never taught before, including this really cool mapping feature. I'm going to show you how to use it. Regardless of what you want to map, you're going to be able to learn how to do that, and along with a really cool mapping feature and routing feature, which is going to automatically route. So that's really cool. We're also going to learn how to create these really cool work orders where we can add and update customers. We can filter jobs. We can save work orders. We can create and print brand new work orders very easily. So we're going to go into that detail. We're also going to create a really cool dashboard screen along with multiple different areas. We've going to have slicers and a whole lot of that. So we're going to go into that. I'm going to show you how to do that. Pivot tables. I've also got a really cool home screen. We're going to be able to access any part of it using a dynamic admin screen, field technicians, dashboard, work orders, service items, and a whole lot more. But before I get to that, I want to make sure that you do get these trainings always alerted, and the best way to do that is to subscribe. Make sure you also click on the notification icon bell. That's going to ensure that you get these trainings to you each and every week. If you like these applications, I've got 250 of them in an Excel template file, zip file. All of my templates are available there, along with PDF codebooks, and that'll help your learning advance it, and you get a ton of great templates. That's also going to help us out keep these trainings for free. Another great way to do that is with Patreon. I've got a really cool Patreon platform. If you have a feature, you have a fix, or you want me to focus on an area on any of these trainings, I'm doing that inside my Patreon. What do I mean by that? Well, if you take a look at some of the past applications, for example, we created this little mini accounting application just a few weeks ago. Inside the Patreon platform, I've now added search orders so we can have the ability to search orders by any number of factors, including order dates, order ID, name, employee, and of course from to. So I really added this brand new feature, and that is only available to our Patreon members. I'll include the link down below. Just like that, along with that, inside the mind map, we now have the ability to use overdue tasks. We can view task lists by projects and a whole lot more. So I've added that feature on based on a request by one of our members. So we now have that ability. Also inside the multi-page invoice, we can now email an invoice. That upgrade was also added inside our Patreon platform. We can automatically create these dynamic emails very quickly and easily with just a single button. So all of that going on inside our Patreon platform. I'll include the link down below. It's a great way to get a lot more help. And of course, I've got PDF codebooks inside there. I've got early bird discounts supporting training resources. I've got full video downloads, member only discounts, and a whole lot more. So make sure you show up, and I'll include that link down below. That's our Patreon. All right, let's get started on this training. This is a really comprehensive application, and when this training is finished, make sure you stick to the end, because you're going to learn how to create your very own application. You can use it for your own purposes, or of course you can create these and sell them on your own. I really highly recommend it, creating that passive income that you want without trading time for money. So that's why we're here, not only to teach you Excel, but to make you successful with Excel. That is my goal. Okay, so the best thing to do is just to make sure that you stick with the entire training. I know they can be long and comprehensive, but I work really hard to bring these to you each and every week, and I hope that you will be able to take a lot from these trainings. Okay, so the field service, the idea is when you have a company, in fact, one of my first companies was a field service company, a professional handyman company, so I know a little bit of something about this particular subject, and we're able to basically send maintenance men out on the road, but you got to keep track of them. What jobs are they on? What locations are they on? on, what statuses their orders, have they been completed. So it's a lot to keep track of. And the best way to do that is with an application like this. So this type of application is very, very high in demand. So whether you create this for yourself or somebody else around the world, you can make a lot of money when you do this. Download my template, work with it, customize it, secure it, make it your own, change it however you like. And of course, then you can also resell it or use it on your own. All right, so here's what we're going to do. What we have here basically is we have an admin section here, which covers basically, we've got technicians' photos. As you see in the job map, we've got different photos of the different technicians. We want to make sure to include them. The best way to do that is to locate a folder. Okay, I've got order statuses, those can be changed, and colors per order. If we take a look on the job map, you see the border here is different, right? The border on each of these jobs is different, and it's going to be based on the status. So we certainly need to have the colors inside our admin screen, and of course it's fully customizable. We can color it any which way we want, and then it'll be automatically colored. So then those changes will be automatically reflected on the particular mapping screen. Okay, we have scheduling. This part we're not going to be using. This could be something for the future or Patreon. You may want to add a scheduling component. So I just left this here because we may want to add a scheduling component, or you may. So the ability to display days on the scheduling, like a day view or a week view, could be really helpful. Service types, right? We want to have a service type if we want to know inside our work orders what type of work we're doing. We can assign a service type. That can be very helpful. So we can do that inside there. As you can see here, inside that we have different service. Our service items have service types. Let's take a look inside our service items here, and we see we have service types associated. So we know what type of work that we're going to be doing associated with the job. So we got a list of that. We also want to know the technician types. We see inside our technicians, specific technicians can have different types. So we can assign a plumber, an HVAC, or different types to each technician. That helps us keep track of them. And when we have a job that requires a certain skill, we know who to assign to it. Inside our job map, we can also show skills based on, if we only want to show the plumbers, we can do that. It's only going to show those plumbers and where they're located, or HVAC, or maybe you want to show all of them. So it's going to be based on the type of technician. We can show that in here. All right. Also in the admin screen, we want to have a duration of times. We want to assign times to our work orders and the duration, and also areas, right? Jobs have certain areas. We may want to categorize them based on areas. So inside the work order, we will be able to set an area here based on a drop-down list and then the status. Okay, so that's basically the makeup of our admin screen. It's relatively simple. Now, along with the work orders, we got just some database. So let's just go over the database. It's relatively simple. Where our data is located, right? Well, first thing we have is our technicians, right? We've got a list of technicians. I've got a list of customers here. Customers includes the customer information. A list of service items. For an item, we have a service name, the type, the description, the default hours, a unit cost, and a sales price. The sales price could be really handy if we create an invoice. In fact, I might be doing that on our Patreon if we get enough requests to automatically create a one-click invoice, to automatically turning a work order into an invoice with one click. That way we can convert our unit cost, our cost, to our sales price, and we can easily create an invoice based on a work order with one click. So I may be adding that on Patreon. The orders database, this is where all of our orders are kept, including the order ID, the customer, job name, schedule date, the time, the duration, technician, status area, notes. I need location. This will help us out for the mapping purposes. And then the assigned technician type, the technician type that's been assigned to that. We'll be going in detail. The order items database, these are the individual items per order. Order number 7 has 2 items. So if we take a look inside our work orders and we search for order number 7, we have it right here. We see that 7 has 2 items attached to it. So our order items database, we need to track which items are stored with which order. We know order number 7, here's number 7, it's going to have 2 items attached to it. If I decide to add a third item and then I save it, of course, that's going to be a brand new one inside that order items database. So we'll be able to keep track of that. Notice it just got added here. And then we have some pivot tables that are just going to help us with our dashboard, okay? We have a dashboard which will be covering in detail work orders, job mapping, technicians and customers. So we got a kind of a roundabout, and of course we have that admin screen and the home screen, which puts it all together, and we'll be able to access each of those screens on just a single click. And now back to the home, we'll have each screen has a home button, so we can quickly navigate among the screens very, very easily. So we'll be going over all of that. The first screen, what I want to do is we focus on the admin screen. Is very simple. So we'll basically, you have an understanding of that. The only pretty much function here is the ability to browse for a folder, because that's kind of it for that, and the color there. So we'll go over that a little bit. But what I really want to do is I want to put our first focus on this work order, because this is how the work orders get created, right? We're able to actually search work orders, right? We can include completed or exclude completed. We can search by customers. We can search by order ID. We can search even by job name, right? So if we want to search only Nancy Smith's jobs, right, we can do that here. And it's going to only show those Nancy jobs that include the word Nancy. Or maybe we want to search by a particular status, right? We only want to show those that have been completed. So we can do that here, even if we just put in the word completed. Here, it's going to only show those jobs which are completed. And so we can do a lot of that, right? This dynamic search feature, I want to show you that. We'll be able to add new and update customers as we want. If we change this name, we want to make sure that it gets updated automatically. Simply saving the customer, that's going to update that and then update it in the customer database there. So we can add an update. We can also print work orders. Notice here we have a printable work order. All we need to do is just click print work order. It's going to print in that format that we have, and that sets the print range. So it's automatically going to print on just a single click there. Maybe we'll add email in the Patreon. I don't know. Let me know what you want. And so we have a lot of features here. We can add service items as you've seen. So let's get into that, and let's get into the first changes that we have. We notice that when we select a different customer, we notice that the customer name, address, and information all adds up inside this information, this section here, all the customer information. So how do we do that? We're going to extract that information directly from the customer database. Now, to do that, we certainly need to know what row it is located on. And the best way to do that is can use the match formula. So that's just what we did inside the work order here. So if we take a look inside our two columns, which are for admin, I want a row that's associated with that customer. I'm going to put it in B9. So we're going to use the match formula. We're going to wrap it on if error, and we're going to be displayed whatever's on H4. And we're going to look at it in a name range called customer name. This is the named range that we've already created here inside the name manager. I'll be going over these named ranges as they come up so that we don't add all of them at the same time. This is the dynamic named range based on all the customers, and I'm going to update that. So that's all we need to do based on the customers there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and update that. In fact, let me just get rid of that one. This was just, we don't need that. Okay, so we also want to know if we can have the ability to add a brand new customer, right? So if we want to add a new customer and we decide that, okay, let's say we want to add a brand new customer. So what we want to do that is just simply add the customer here. So we can type in the customer name right here, and then we're going to show the blank. So we can then put in our customer name, we can put in the address, and then we can add in all the information if we want, and we're just going to save the customer. That customer is now going to be added in. So we do have that available now as we can add it in. So if we select another customer and we select David Davis, we're going to see all that information automatically updated. Great. So we can add new customers, we can save customers, and we can do all that. So we can also load customer information when we select a customer. So how do we do that? Well, that is going to be on the worksheet change event, meaning when we make a change to this particular cell, H4, we want the customer information to load here. So that's going to be called customer load. That is what we're going to be performing. So that we're going to do inside the VBA. And let's take a look inside the developer. We're going to go into Visual Basic, Alt F11. If you are new to VBA, it might go a little fast. You might want to check out one of the courses by my friend Daniel Strong, who's an incredible VBA trainer, and he does basics. So I'll include the link down below. Covers everything from the beginning. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on this particular order screen. Order screen is the one we're looking at. And we're going to make a worksheet change. So that's the event that we're going to focus on. And we want to load on customer name change, meaning if we make a change to H4, we want something to happen. Well, first thing what we need to do is determine, is it a new customer or not, right? If I put in a different customer named Jack, right, that is not an existing customer. So therefore, no customer row will be generated in B9. Notice it's wrapped if error, and we're going to show empty. So B9 is going to tell us whether it is a new customer or whether it is an existing customer. Simply if there's a value in here, that's going to be the row. So B9 will tell us. So what do I want to do? If B9 doesn't equal empty, we know it is an existing customer. If it's an existing customer, we want to extract that row using dimension customer row as a long variable. We're going to get that from B9. We know the customer rows in B9. And then all we need to do is just fill the fields accordingly. Basically, all we're going to do is take the information directly from the database in column C or in column D or E or F and so on, and just place them directly inside the work orders located here in H6, H7, A associated. So basically, we're not using data mapping in this case, so we're just placing each individual value. We could certainly use data mapping. This might call for it because we've got about 7 lines of code here, so we could data mapping would be about 3 lines of code, but this is okay for our purposes. So we're simply going to just load in all of the fields there, and that's all you have to do. However, else, what if no customer exists, meaning B9 is equal to empty? This is else. In that case, I want to clear all the associated customer fields. That way the user can then enter a brand new one. So that's how you saw. As soon as we put something in brand new, all of those fields get cleared out right here very, very easily. So that's all we want to happen, simply clearing out those fields. This line of code will go ahead and clear out those fields. So that is all we need to do to load a customer. Okay, the next up, we did see we have a save customer. Notice that when we save a customer, we want to make sure to do that. Now, this button functions twice. It's either going to save a new customer or it's going to update an existing customer. And of course, we've assigned a macro to this. If we click Assign Macro, we see that we have a macro called Customer Add or Update right here. Customer save or update. When we edit this and go into the edit, it's going to go into the order macros module, a module called order macros. And then it's going to lead us right here to customer save or update. And again, we're going to use B9 once again. B9 is going to tell us, is it an existing customer with a row, or is it, if it's empty, it's a brand new customer. So that's what we need to do. So we're going to dimension the customer row is long. If B9 equals empty, we know it's a new customer. What I want to do is I want to get a brand new ID for that customer, and I want to place that ID directly in column B. Now, where are we going to get that next ID available? That next ID is going to be available right here, located in B10. That's our next available. We're going to use the max formula, customer ID plus 1. That's going to get us a brand new unique ID. If there's an error, perhaps because there's no data at all, we don't have any customers, we're going to default it to 1. So 1 would be the first one. Okay, so that's just what we're going to do. Inside column B, we are going to get the first available row from column B. We're then going to place that next customer ID. It's going to come directly from B10. We're going to place it in column B. These are the two things we're going to do if it is a new customer. However, if it is an existing customer, all we need to do is take that row that's located in B9 and put it directly into this variable called customer row. So either way, we have a customer row, whether it is a new or an existing. Everything else, all 7 lines of code, are exactly the same as we did. All we're going to be doing is taking whatever's in H6 and placing it in column C, H7, the address, and so on and so forth, placing all the customer data from the orders field inside the database. And then we're just going to run a fade out message. That fade out message is this right here. All we're going to be doing is simply taking this shape here, and then we're just going to slowly fade it out using a loop. So that's all we are doing there. We do the same thing when we save in order. Save order is going to do the same thing. When we save in order, we're going to have an automatic there. Okay, so that's all we need to do to save the customer and load the customer inside a work order. Relatively simple there, because we know the customer row, we know the next customer ID. That's great. Now, we also have a really cool order load. Now what we'll do is we're going to continue inside the orders module, but I'm going to move all the way up at the top. And what I'm going to do is we're going to start from the top. So the first macro that we have is called order load list. Now this order load list is the macro that runs either when we click clear filter or either when we run a search, right? If I put in a search here and then we search by, so that's not going to, status is certainly not going to do it. Okay, so let's say pending. I think pending is the status, right? Pending, we want to know only those jobs that are pending, right? So it is the same macro that's run. That macro is automatically going to be run when I make a change to E5. When I make a change to E5, it's going to run. If we take a look back inside that order screen, the first one we saw this on search by change. If the user makes a change to E5, then run this macro order load list. And that's the macro that we're going to go over right here, orders load list. The first thing what we want to do is we want to clear out all the contents associated. So all the way from D7 through E and all the way on down, we want to clear that area out. So that's what we're going to do. And I also noticed when we make a selection of a particular one, let me clear that out. Let's reset that. Actually, when I make a selection of this, I want to make sure that it's including D, not just E. So let's go ahead and update that. That's a selection change event, and take a quick look on that. Under the order screen, we're going to run a selection change event. When I make a selection change of an order, I want to make sure this needs to be changed from D to E. Okay, there we go. D to E. That way, when I make a selection on either column D or either column E, I want that order to load, right? So that order to load. Okay, so let's continue back with this one. When I clear it out, it makes a change here. Why is that? Because it's inter-search, right? So I want all those orders to load up, but first we need to clear them all out. So once we've cleared them all out, we can then move on to the next one. We're going to focus directly on the orders database, right? We need these orders to load up, and those orders are going to come directly from, let's bring this over here. Those are going to come directly from this orders database. Inside here, we have all the order information, as we saw before. So what I want to do is I want to run an advanced filter based on some criteria, based on this criteria here. I then want those results to come here. When I take those results, I'm going to copy those results, and I'm going to bring them directly into here. Okay, so but the first thing we need to do is we need to check if this is inter-search. If this is inter-search, we know that there is no criteria at all. So that's the first thing we want to do. I also want to know, what are we searching by? Are we searching by order ID or status? So whatever we're searching by, such as order ID, I want to make sure that that we're searching by is located right here in O2. Notice O2 says order ID. However, as soon as I change it to a different search criteria, such as job name, we'll see that it's been changed here. So all we need to do is simply link it to that original search cell. However, this we don't need. Order ID, let's say if equipment, let's just do, we don't need this here because that was just a change. So let's just put E4. Everything is fine just the way it is. Let's say equals E4 because it's never going to equal equipment. That was from a prior training, so we're good on that. Okay, so we like it. So job name, everything that is in E4 is going to automatically appear here. So as we change it up here, it's going to change. Perfect, because that's just the way I like it. So we change it to status. So now we're going to search by status. However, what is in this field here? What I want to do is, if I know if this, the work order is E5 equal inter-search, then what we don't want to do is just make sure it's nothing, right? Or if it's nothing, right? So if it's nothing in E5 or it's inter-search, what does that mean? That means if the user hasn't put anything here, if it's empty, or the words inter-search. In either one of those things, we're just going to put empty because there is no criteria, right? There's no criteria set here under status, okay? Also, we're going to put does not equal, right? Also, if the work order does not equal order ID, does not equal order ID, then I want to put an asterisk, then whatever's in E5, and then another asterisk. Why is that important, right? Because if it's an order ID, I want to search by exact order ID, right? I don't want about, I want exact order ID. So for that way, the criteria would be only this order ID. However, if we search by a text or string type such as customer, I may want to know a partial one, right? I want to maybe know just Nancy or NAN, right? So in that case, I want to search everything that might have NAN inside it. If I do even something like A, right, it's going to search everything with an A in it, right? So in this case, I'm looking for a partial search. In that case, for something that is not the order ID, such as customer, job name, technician, or status, I want to use the asterisk, those wildcards before and after, right? So that's just what we have inside here. Inside this, that means that if it's not order ID, we're simply going to add the asterisk, then the work order, whatever's in E5, and then another asterisk. Otherwise, it is the work order ID. We're simply going to show exactly what the user has entered without adding the wildcards before and after the string. Okay, that's going to ensure that when we search by order ID, we get an exact search. When we search by any other text or string, we're simply going to get a partial match is fine. There's an additional criteria. If we take a look at here, do we want to include completed jobs or not? Now, what is a completed job? Well, a completed job, if we look in our admin, it would be something that's anything that's been completed or anything that's been invoiced. So therefore, if I decide that we are going to add that criteria in here, if we are going to include the completed, if we're not including the completed, right, I want to make sure that we don't include both of those, right? So if we take a look at this and we see this connected to B2, B2 is either going to be true or false based on that selection. Knowing that it's true or false, if it's false, right, that means we're not including completed and we're not including orders that have been invoiced. So we need to update the criteria as well. And we do that directly here and here. And this is the and, meaning and it's not completed and it's not invoiced. So I only want to show those orders which are not completed and not invoiced. And so we can do that with this formula here. If the work orders B2 equals true, then show empty, right? That means we want to show all of them. Otherwise, we're excluding completed, we're excluding invoices. In that case, I want to, this one does not equal what's in the admin C13, and this one does not equal admin C12, which is both completed and invoiced. So that way, we're going to search only those orders which are not completed and not invoiced. So everything that is pending, which would be everything that is either pending, scheduled, in process, these three. So that way only those three types of orders are going to show up regardless. So that's going to be based on this selection here. Now, of course, we just assign a macro to this. That means as the user changes it, it's automatically, this orders load list is going to automatically run every time we make that selection. So every time we select on this, it's going to rerun that macro, which refreshes it. Okay, great. So we're going to continue on through that. So we understand that criteria here and how it's going to be working. Once we have our criteria, which was all the way from O2 through Q3, we're just going to have those results appear directly in S3 through S2. So back into the code with the orders database, we're ready to go. We're going to determine the last row of the data. If the last row of data is less than 3, it should be less than 4 actually. I think our first row of data starts on row 4. Let's double check that. And it should be the first row of data starts on row 4. So anything less than 4 would be no data. So that's sufficient for our purposes. We have no data. Okay, so we're ready to run an advanced filter. Now that advanced filter is going to start all the way from A3, and then it's going to go all the way through up. We don't need it to everyone, but it'll go all the way through J, which is sufficient for our purposes, through notes. We don't need to search any of this information. Just J is fine. We could probably do it up to status, but we kept it on notes in case we want to add additional features. So our criteria, as mentioned, is going to be O2 through Q3. That's what we have right here inside. It should be O through Q3. Then we have S2 through T2. Our results are going to come directly from S2 through T2. This is where we want those results to come, and there's our results going to come here. So once we get the results, we're going to determine the last row of those results based on column S. I want to know the last row of the results. In this case, that last row is 502. So I know the last row, so I can know all of the information, all of those orders that we need to bring over directly into the work order screen. If the last row is less than 3, we're going to exit the sub out. So we're going to bring all the way over from column S and T all the way in through D and E. Now our results start in row 3 here. However, our destination starts in row 7, so we need to compensate that difference by adding 4. Notice it starts in row 7 here. It starts in row 3 here. The difference is 4. That's what we're adding in. And that's all we need to do, load the list. Now, clearing the filter is just one line of code. When I clear this filter, all I need to do is just simply click clear filter, and it's going to put the enter search directly in E5. Once that text is entered directly inside E5, the worksheet change macro will automatically trigger and it will automatically refresh it. And that's all we have to do. So orders range E5 enter search. This is the macro that's tied to that clear filter button. Great, so that's all we need to do that. Now we have another one. Now let's go ahead and focus on the macro that is going to save our orders. When I click save order, I want to either save or update the order. Well, how do we know the difference if it's a new order or an existing order? If I click new order, I've got a no order ID associated and no order row. However, if I have an existing order, I have an order ID. I'm going to put that in B3, and I have an order row. Now that order row is based on using the match based on the order ID. If we go into the formulas and the name manager and we look in order ID, we see that we have an order ID. For those of you who followed my training, you've seen this before. However, the repetition will help make your programming a lot quicker. You'll be able to develop these applications in record time because of this application. I developed this entire application in 3.5 days. So repetition will help. So even if once you know the steps by heart, it's extremely easy to develop these applications in just a few days, believe it or not. Okay, so what we have here is the order row. This is the row that's associated with this, and that's the row. That means row order ID 4 is located on row 7. If we look in our order database, we see that our order ID 4 is located on row 7. I want that row because if I'm going to save or update it, I need to know which row to make those updates on. So we have that here when we save or update. However, of course, if it is blank, we know it's a new one. We will need to assign a brand new row, and we will need to assign a brand new order ID. We can extract that brand new order ID from B5 using the max formula. That's the order ID plus 1. So that's going to get us our brand new order ID. So if it's a new order, we know where to get it from. If it's an existing order, we just practice that. So let's do that. That's the macro order save or update. That is the macro that is tied to this button here. Okay, so we click assign macro. We see that it is that macro. That's the macro we're going to focus on. Focusing on with the order screen, right? But I want to make sure that the user has added some information. Certainly, I don't want to make sure that there's a customer associated. I want to make sure that there's a job associated with that. That's very important. So we're going to make sure that that is required. If H6 is empty, that's the customer name, let the user know to please make sure to add a customer before saving this order. We're going to exit the sub out. Same thing with K6, that would be our job name. If that's empty, let the user know that a job name is required before saving it. Okay, next I want to determine if it is a new order or if it's an existing order. B4 is going to tell us that. B4 will be full, have a number if it is an existing order. However, B4 will be empty if it is a new order. So B4 is going to say, if it is empty, it is a brand new order. What we need to do is determine the first order row. It's going to be based on our order database, the first available row plus 1. That's our new database row. We're going to assign that next order ID. Remember, it's coming from the max formula in B5. We're going to place that in B3. I'm also going to take that order ID and I'm going to place it in column A in the first, and that's going to be the first order ID. So you can see that that brand new order ID is going to go directly inside the order ID in column A. Everything else, regardless, that we put in is going to be based, whether it is new or an existing, we are going to either save it new or update it. It's going to be the same code. So that means that everything else here's data mapping, right? We're going to run a loop from order column 2 to 10. Why is that? Because starting at 2 all the way to 10, the last one here, right? Actually, we'll go just to 10. This is J is 10, right? And I'm going to use data mapping. That means whatever's in H6 of our work order screen, like our customer name, I'm going to place directly inside this column. Whatever's in K6 of our order screen, I'm going to place in this. And we're just simply going to loop from 2 all the way to 10, taking whatever's in those fields and placing it directly in the row here. So that's what we're going to do here. Order column equals 2 to 10. We're taking whatever's located in row 1 using data mapping, row 1, that range, whatever's in the order screen of that range, and we're simply adding it to the database. That's it. We need to save the items, right? If there's any items that are associated with that work order, I need to save these. I need to know if they've been saved or not, or have they been saved or not. Now, if they've been saved already, they're already located in our order items database. Let's drag this over. They're already, for example, we see that order number 7 has 3 items, 1, 2, and 3 here. So we see that. We know that order items rows on row 4, row 5, and row 12. Okay. So when we pull up order number 7, we know that it has been saved. Let's pull that one up particularly. We see that it's been saved on row 4, row 5, and row 12. I need to know that the database row is associated. So if I add a new one, and let's say I save this, I know that because this is empty, this item has not been saved. We need to make sure that we assign a new row. So as soon as we click save order, it is going to, oh, we need to add a customer on this one. There we go. Mary Badgers. Okay, there we go. That's a customer. As soon as we save that customer, save that order here, we know it's going to assign that new row, 13 right here. And so the steps for saving this is simply determine the last row. And then once we determine the last row, all we need to do is loop from 18 to the last row. Check to see if there's a row associated. If there is, update that particular row. If there's not, use the first available row, put that row in here, and then add in all the information, including the item, the description, the quantity, and hours. And that's going to be ordered right here. So we're going to add the order ID, the item, description, quantity. If it's been completed, we'll put it there. What row is associated? What row is that? Of course, that's going to be the row of the work order. So we know that this is on row 21, 20, 19, 18, and so on. So that's the next part of the code. That's what we're going to be going in right here. So we're going to save those items. We're going to determine the last row based on column H24, right? So we're going to determine the last row here. Actually, let's go a bit higher than that, H99. Okay, we can do a lot. Okay, so I want to know the last available row. If it is less than 18, there's no items, right? If it's anything less than 18, we know there's no items. We can skip that. If it's not, what we can do is run a loop for the item row equals 18 to the last row. Again, we're going to look in column B. Has it been saved before? If B equals empty, we know it is a new database row, and therefore we're going to get that item database row at the first available row inside our order item database and the first available row. We're going to then also take that item database row and put it in column B, and it's going to be based on the first order database row. So I want that, set that database row in column B, right? I want to put that row because it hasn't been set. I'm going to place it directly in here. So next up inside the database, I'm going to do three things, and those three things are only for new items. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set that order ID. That order ID is located in B3, and that's very important. I'm going to take whatever order ID is located here, and I'm going to place it directly inside column A. I would then next also want the row and the row associated. So those are the other two items. So we want to take in column F, I'm going to place that item row. That item row is the exact row that we want to save inside the work orders, whether it's 18, 19, or 20. And the reason for that is because when I bring it back inside, I want to make sure to put it in the same row where we actually updated it or added it, and that ensures that it's the same row. And next up, I also want to add that database row. Now, rows can be deleted, so what I want to do is I want to put in a formula here, not just the row itself. I want to put a formula, and that way if I delete a row, all the other rows beyond that will update automatically. And so that formula gets added in right here inside column G. We're going to see row, setting that formula row. Otherwise, if it's an existing database, we're simply going to extract that database row from column B. The other four remaining items, all we're simply going to be doing is updating them, regardless if it is a new item or an existing item. We're going to add in the item name, or update it, I should say, add or updated, description, quantity, and completed at. So those four items. That is it. We're simply going to run that fade out message and do events. That's going to show that the fade out message runs even when the user does something else. That's order fade out messages right here, simply looping through, changing the transparency, and then finally hiding it. So we're going to show that shape, make it more transparent, and then hide the shape. That's it. Okay, great. So next up, what about a new order? If I add a new order, simply all I'm going to do is just clear out a bunch of cells and then select H4. Very, very simple. Not much going on there. If we're loading an order, well, when do we load an order? Well, we load an order as soon as we select on an order. If we remember, every time we make a selection change, we're going to load that order up. So that's going to come from a selection change event. Okay, so if we take a look inside the selection, onside the orders here, taking a look inside here and scrolling down to selection change, and the user makes a selection change anywhere from D7 through E99. And I also want to make sure we'll use D, and we want to make sure that D and the target row are not equal to empty. Sure, it has to contain a value, right? If we scroll all the way down here, whoa, way down here, all the way at the bottom here, and there's nothing here, certainly we don't want anything to happen, right? So, only if there's an actual order do we want something to happen. So we should actually add more than that. So that's exactly what we want to do inside. We want to make sure that it's automatically D contains a value there. That's very, very important. So continuing on, if it does, then what we're going to do is we're going to set B3, that order ID, to whatever is located in D in the target row. Okay, then what I want to do inside B7, I want to know the selected row. If you notice it, we see that row gets highlighted, and that's the selected row. That selected row is going to go into B7. So we can use conditional formatting that's going to highlight it. That way we know that dark green is going to be the one that has been selected. We can use conditional formatting to help us with that. And that means B7 equals to the row. We're just simply going to give it that dark back color with the bold white font. The other ones are simply the even rows are going to get this white. The odd rows are going to get this light green. So we get this alternating color, this really professional look. Great. So what happens when we do that? Well, the next thing what we want to do is simply run the macro called order load. That is the macro that we're going over right now called order load. First thing we want to do is clear all the contents, just almost the same as order new, except we certainly don't want to clear out two things. I don't want to clear out the order ID. We just placed it there. I don't want to clear out the order row because we just placed it there by selecting on that. So those two items don't get cleared out. Everything else does get cleared out. We want to make sure that B4, right, we need to, as soon as we place that order ID located in B3, we we know that B4 is going to calculate that row automatically. If for some reason B4 is empty, right, we don't have a row, we can't load the order. So we certainly need to make sure that B4 does contain a value, right? If it doesn't, please let the user know to select the correct order, and we're going to exit out of the sub. We're going to turn off application screen updating. That'll speed things up. We're going to set that order row inside a long variable from B4. And then again, we're going to use the reverse data mapping, just as we did with save and update, except this time we're simply extracting the cells located in here, and we are going to get that cell from row 1 of the orders, and whatever is in that order row and that order column, we're simply going to place it in that cell directly on the order screen, whatever that cell is. Okay, then I also want to make sure that we add in a customer. Now notice, right, inside the orders here, we're only saving the customer name. I'm not saving the customer address. So we certainly want to make sure that once we add that customer name in here, I also want to put it in here, because once I put that same customer name in here, it's going to trigger that we add all the address, the state, and information. So by taking whatever is located in B6 and placing it directly in H4, it will automatically trigger the address to load. So that's just what we're going to do right here. H4 equals H6 triggers the customer address load. Next up, we have to load the items. Remember, we just saved the items, and now what we want to do is we want to load them in. So that's the important thing, is we want to know all the items associated with order number 2, right? Or in this case, we have some orders. All the order items associated with number 7. So we can do that in the order items database. I'm going to run an advanced filter based on order ID 7. And that's going to come link directly what is in work orders B3. So what I want to do is run an advanced filter, and I want the results to come all the way here. I want to know the order row, the name, the description. I'm skipping a column. Why am I skipping a column? I'm skipping a column because if we take a look inside our work orders, we're using some merge cells. Be careful with this, it's a little bit tricky, but we can get around it. Notice description is 2 columns, right? And quantity in the hours is the next column, and then completed on. Now completed on is also merge cells, but our cell here, K, our first cell covers it. So what I want to do is I've got 1, 2, this is 2 columns, so 3, and then 4. So quantity hours are 4th column, right? I want to make sure it's much easier inside the code if I can do that. So I want to make sure that 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I need to include the blank column. Now keep in mind that when we have a blank column in our results, we need to make sure that our original data also includes that blank column. So we need to make sure that our original data is going to, in our advanced filter, is going to extend all the way to column H. And that's just what we did inside our advanced filter. So with the order item database, we're going to get that last row. And if it's less than 4, we're going to go to no data. We're going to run an advanced filter A3 all the way through H. Notice we're using the blank column because our results also have a blank. Our criteria is going to be K2 through K3. And the results are going to come from M2 all the way through S2. And that's just what we have here, M2 through S2, along with the criteria of K2. We're getting the last row based on column M, making sure that it contains data, and then we're simply going to run a loop. So all I need to do is determine what row, 18, 19, 20, what row, get that into a variable, and then I know exactly what row to place this information in. So we're going to get that order row, come directly from M, column M. Then all we're going to do is simply place that information. Column B is going to take on what? Remember, inside column B must take on that database row. And that database row is going to come directly from here, column S. So that's the first thing what we want to do is place that directly. B is going to take on that database row. Next up, all I need to do is just, in a single line of code, take on that item name, description, and quantity and bring it all the way over. So that's all we need to do, along with the completed on. Skipping it, so that way we can simply copy. It's like copy and paste, but value to value exchange. All the way we know that our G through K is simply going to be equal to N through R. And that's just what we did inside the code right here. G through K equals N through R. Bring in the item, description, quantity, and then complete it on date and time. So that's it. That's all we have to do. Next up is deleting the order, and then we'll get onto the mapping, which is going to be really cool. So order delete, right? So when we delete an order, we first certainly want to make sure that the user has requested delete, just in case. So we want to make sure that if they delete an order, we want this pop-up, are you sure you want to delete that order? That's going to come inside a message box. Are you sure you want to delete this order? If it's no, then we're going to exit the sub. With orders, now what I want to do is I need to know it has been saved or not. Why is that important? Because if I do a new order And oops, I'm going to make sure that that H6 gets cleared out on the new order. Let's add that in there. Must have missed that. Okay, so order new, making sure that H6 gets, let's add that in right here. H6, okay, that was important. All right, save in our work, always save it and change. So when we do a new order, I want to make sure that we have to actually determine, is it a new? So if I decide I put a customer in here and I put some information in here, I want to make sure if I delete this, there's no row that's associated. So it's very, very simple to just clear it out and add the new one, right? But however, if there's a database row that's already assigned, I need to delete it from the database directly. So what we're going to be doing inside the delete is determining has it been saved before, right? So if we look right in here and delete, if before equals empty, we know go to not save. It's going to skip all that database delete and go all the way down to here. However, if it has been saved, we're going to take that order row and we're going to extract a new value called order row. Then we're going to delete the entire order from the orders database. Now what I want to do is clear the items, right? If there's items associated with that, let's add in a new order here and add scheduled on date and then a job name. And then we can add some items. I want to make sure that we are actually deleting the individual items as well. Super important, so that I know database row 14, 15, and 16 must also get deleted. So to do that, and they have to delete it from here, right? If we add those, I want to make sure that they get automatically deleted. So to do that, what we want to do is run an advanced filter, determining the last row. And then, of course, we're going to run that exactly the same advanced filter that we did. And this time, we're going to determine the last results row. If the last results row are less than 3, that means there are no items associated with that. We can go to no save, just skip down here. However, if there's a single row, what I want to do is I want to make sure that we sort them. And why is that important? Because when I run the advanced filter, I want to make sure that we're going to delete row 16 first, then 15, and then 14, only in that order. So what I want to do is when I get those results inside here, I want to make sure, let's load that order here. Okay, so what we want to do is I want to make sure that it's automatically loaded inside. Okay, so let's do the order ID, and that's the one I want. Order ID, search by order ID. So we'll load it in so it automatically loads in. Okay, so what I want to do now, if we take a look in the order item database, I want to make sure when we're deleting it, row 20 starts here, so on column S, row 16, row 15, then 14. So I want to sort it based on the highest, so that when I loop, I want to delete row 16, then I want to delete 15, and then I want to delete 16. So we must sort it descending. That's what we're going to do right here. First of all, we're going to clear any fields. We're going to add a key based on S3. That is our first one. And then I want to make sure it's sorting descending, right? Descending here. That range is going to be M through S. So once I apply that sort, it's automatically going to be sorted descending based on column S. Then all we need to do is loop through the results row from 3 to the last results row. We're going to extract from column S that order items database row. Then we're going to delete it. Then we're going to loop through that. That's all we have to do. We're going to run the macro that clears the new order, and then we're going to reload that list to make sure that that order is no longer needed. So that's all we have to do. So if I go into the work orders and I click delete order, we're going to go, are you sure? And then yes, and then we're going to reload the list, and it's going to reload that list. Okay, great. So that's how we do. If we take a look in the order database, they're gone here. Everything's been cleared out. It is now cleared out at the bottom, and it is gone, 505. Okay, very, very good. I'm glad we got to go over that. Let's go take a look on. We also want to be able to print that work order. Printing that work order, relatively simple. When we go in there, all I need to do is just preset to make sure that that work order is set here. If we take a look at that work order, and that's going to be set up all the way here. So we did set a print area. All I have to do is go into the page layout, print area, and then set that print area, and that's automatically set. Now notice that the work order here is simply linked to that. So we automatically link it. So if we take a look inside this work order, we see, okay, just had to make a few updates. So we see that it is linked to the work order. This is linked to H6, this is linked to H7, and this is linked to H8, J8, and L8. Okay, so we want to make sure that it is all linked accordingly. The same thing here. We want to make sure it's linked to B3, the schedule date to H7, start time. So they're all linked to the original work order here. And we also can see that here it's linked to any items. So let's go ahead and load up one that we have here under 7. Or do we delete that one? Clear that all? Okay. And we'll show that. I want to show 7 because I know that's got items on it. So I want to be able to make sure that we're simply linking this. So all I do is just create links inside here that's linking it to the original based on that. So all we do is just link it. And that's going to be, and this is linked to the notes. Okay, so everything is just linked to the original right here. Very, very simple. So if I just change the order, it automatically changes. Then we already set the print area. So inside the print area, it's very easy. All we're going to be doing is just simply printing it out. And we want to make sure that we're honoring the print area. So this is going to be false. Okay, setting it to the default printer, which is true. That's it. Okay, customer save and update. We already went over that. That was easy. And we save message. That is it. That's all we have on the order screen. Now we can focus on the mapping screen. So we got a good idea of everything. We went to print, new order, save order, delete customer, delete order, and save the customer. Everything's been done. Now let's take a look in this very, very, very cool mapping screen. So we look into the job maps. And basically the idea is this. What I want to do is I want to navigate between maps. I want to click today, or I want to have a select on a specific day, and I want to have all of the orders associated with that day showing up. I only have a little bit of data, but I have a lot of data on this particular date, June 8th, so that's kind of helpful. I want the jobs to show up here if they haven't been scheduled. If I want to schedule them, I want to simply bring them all the way over here, schedule, and simply schedule them just with one click. That's all we have to do to locate, actually I should say schedule or map it, I should say, map it on the map. And then just simply that. So it's very, very easy to map a particular job on a particular location. So how do we get this cool map? Well, the cool map is actually a page background. So we look under the page layout and we delete the background and we see that it is gone, right? So when we want to add a background, all we need to do is just select on a map that you've been using. And I've got one right here. And then it's called LA map, okay? And then so you just place it in there. So, but how do we create that map? Well, basically all I did was just simply go into Google. So we just go into maps.google, right? You choose your city here. Let's just bring this down, right? So you can choose any city, obviously. So I'll choose Los Angeles, right? Where I'm from. Okay, so you get your Los Angeles map and then you can close this out. So you take a screenshot and I'll just take a screenshot of anything that I want to. Let's say I'm going to do something like this. So then what you want to do is I want to create a border actually, and I want to have, so let's just take a screenshot just as a sample here. So I'll grab that screenshot. So I'll just take a screenshot right here. And then what we'll do is we'll grab that screenshot. And then what we can do is we can edit it and update it. Okay, so here's my screenshot right here that I just taken. So what I want to do is I want to create, then I'm going to take this screenshot and I'm going to add a border. I want to add some top bar to it and a left bar. If we look in the application, we see that I've got this top bar here and left. It's not perfectly up on the upper left because I want information for those jobs that have not been mapped yet, and I want information for the header. So then all I did was inside my browser is that I went into Pixlr, and this is just a little bit of a photo editing thing, and all I did was I added it to my map. So I created this. So all I did was just go in here, added a particular gradient, or actually a shape here, so just a rectangular shape here, and then I gave it a fill, right? So the fill, you see that it's a gradient fill, and I chose from this dark green to this lighter green. So that's all I did, and then I just positioned it up there. I got the position just right, and I saved it as a PNG. So that's how I got this really cool background here. And then once it's in there, you just create a background. Now keep that in mind, this works, you can create it as many as you want. You can create different maps. In fact, you might even want to have like a location and then select it and have VBA to change the screenshot. That's possible too once you get them all set up and mapped out. Might show you how to do that inside Patreon. Okay, so we have that here, the ability. So I have this map, it acts as a picture. But now, because it is a static image, we're not really mapping it to the map, right? This can work on any version of Excel, which is very helpful, but basically we need to tell it where the location is. When I move it to the location, I'm telling Excel exactly where it is. So when I click this, that means it's going to save that location. All I need to do is then save the coordinates, the left position and the top position, so that when it gets refreshed, I know. So notice that Nancy Smith. So if I go to previous day, not going to show up. If I go to next day, right, that Nancy Smith is going to show up. Oops, June 8th, actually, right? We're on June 8th. June 8th, Nancy Smith is going to be in the exact same spot we moved it up. Notice if we decide we want to move it up, we save that location, we see that it's going to be saved. So if I go to, let's say, June 9th here, and then I go back to June 8th, it's going to be at that upper location. So all I need to do is save the left and the top coordinates. So when you looked in the order database, you saw these top location and left location. You saw it right here, left location and top location. All I need to do is save those 2 coordinates or those 2 points, pixel points, with that job. So when I decide to load it, I know exactly where to place that again. Okay, that's what we're going to do inside the code. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So let's continue on. So inside the job map, we know that we're dragging it over and saving it. We have a few. If we want to edit it, all I need to do is click here. It's going to go directly to that job. Let's go back into the home screen here and then go back into the job map here. And then so what I want to do is I also want to just, maybe I want to close that out. So we have a lot of capabilities, and maybe I want to know her route. So where's her route? So her route's located. So we chose a far job for her. It's she's going to be all over the city today. Holy cow. That's quite a trip she's got going on there. But it's very, very cool. I'm going to show you how to do that too. So so that way it's a good way to know, okay, well, I need to bring her jobs closer. She's got too far to drive. But this guy, he's got a short distance. Maybe he's coming up from here. So our technicians, we can see the route that they're going to play simply by just looking on it, okay? All right, great. So we've got that going on. And so I'm going to show you this guy's going to move from here. So this guy's got a better route. I'll work on the speeds to make it a little bit faster. Some are kind of slow. We will get onto that. All right, so we've got a lot of functionality here. So these are all of our jobs that need to be mapped out. So for this particular day, we see that we have 6 different jobs that haven't been set on a map. Again, all we need to do is just go here and then make this little check mark. So let's get into that. The first macro that I'm going to go to is I want to load all of these shapes accordingly. Now, the best way to do that is to create some sample shapes and then duplicate those sample shapes and add our custom information. So I've got some sample shapes located over here. Now, so what I want to do is I want to know this we're going to call map icon sample. I want to duplicate this for every job. This is our tech picture sample. I'm going to duplicate this if they have a picture associated with that. This is our connector. This connector is going to be used when we actually map it. You saw that connector come up, right? Connector goes a lot. This guy's got a few jobs in the day. Okay, so we saw that. We'll let that run out. Then what we also have, it's just so funny. Sorry, it kind of cracks me up. It's unnecessary, but it's fun. I'll show you how to do that. So then we also have the job name sample. I want the name of that job to appear here, and I want all those things. I've got 2 different little cars here. This one's going to be moving around for the route. This is the one that we're going to click. So this is a group. Notice that when I select on a particular job, we're going to show those icons, the icon that's going to save the location, the one that's going to edit it, the one that's going to close this little group, and the one that's going to click on the car that's going to show the route for the day. So I have those 3 icons. So I have this little group that we're going to be duplicating it, and we're going to be attaching it to every job. I also got some named ranges, all types and all statuses, right? Maybe we'll use the all statuses. If I want to know certain statuses, we may be able to add statuses in a little bit future. If I want to add it, means only show certain status of jobs, I may want to add that in, so I put that in here. Or we want to make sure only show particular technician types. We can do that too, as you saw that here. So we can only show those technicians that have specific skills. Or we can show all. So I've got some named ranges down here to help us. That's pretty much it. So the first thing what we're going to do is I need to know all of the jobs associated with this specific date, and for a particular technician type or all types. So again, that's going to be coming from our orders database. So if we take a look inside our orders database and we have some map criteria, this map criteria here. I need to know the scheduled on date. And what is that date? That date's going to be located directly on the map date. If we go inside the job map and we take a look at this here, it's called map date. I've given it a particular map date and of course a pop-up calendar. So this is called map date. So we know that our criteria is the map date. And I also want to make sure the technician type does not equal empty. However, if I change that technician type here, I want to make sure that we also have that specific type that is also going to be set up directly inside here. So this is going to be linked to S2. If S2 is all types, show does not equal empty. Otherwise, show map and S2, right? Which is whatever's there. In this case, it is drywall. So that way, only the results are going to come here. So only those technicians here, those results are going to come here. And this is why that technician type is so important here. So what I want to do is I want to determine the technician here, and I want to extract the technician type here from a formula. Why is that important? Well, we see that our technicians have certain types associated with them. I've created a named range for that. And I want to know what particular technician type based on the technician inside that using a formula. So I've got a technician type named range, a dynamic named range based on this technician type here, based on this one here. And I've got a named range for the technician name. So I've got two dynamic named range. Those are going to come in handy. So all I need to do is use index the technician type. We're using the match based on the technician name. That technician named right here. When I run my advanced filter, I'm going to determine the last row. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this formula, I'm going to bring it all the way down here. That's going to let me know that we know that Peter is an electrician who's on this job. Peter, so the electrician, and that way it's important because if I decide I'm going to change Peter's technician type located directly inside our technicians, we know that it's going to be changed automatically. So if I decide that Peter's actually HVAC, then I go inside our orders database, we see now that Peter is now an HVAC. That's why it's important to link them using a formula so that in case we make changes, it automatically gets updated inside our orders database. And we want to make sure that Peter's jobs will automatically show up on that date. So our code is simply going to bring this formula over. Then what we're going to do is we're going to run a criteria based on that technician type. The results are going to come in here. We're going to loop through these results. We're going to create a job for every single one of them. If there's a picture and the picture has a correct folder, we can add the picture. I also want to make sure that we add them all in, and we want to color it based on status. Notice these are all completed. So I want to make sure that we're coloring it based on those. So if we take a look inside our job map, we see that they all have the same color here in this job map. We can reduce it about a little bit down so we can see them more because we got a bigger map here, but that's good. So we have no unmapped jobs for drywall, right? They've all been mapped out. However, if we use all, if we go back to all types, we can see that we have different types that are all. Okay, great. So we understand that. So let's get into the macro because we kind of understand the functionality that's going to be created as we loop through those results, creating these different shapes. And if there's a location that's associated, we're going to put it. But if there's no location, what do I mean by no location? I mean that there is no top position or there's no left. We need both. We need a left location and we need a top location. If either one of those are empty, we're going to make sure to put it directly inside this first column here. I want to make sure that it's in this column. So that's what we are going to do. So let's take a look inside the code. We're going to go inside the map macros, and the first one's called refresh jobs. We'll go over these variables as we come across them. First of all, we have job shape as a shape. So what I want to do is when I refresh a job, I want to make sure that we are going to remove all of the shapes associated, right? If I'm refreshing it, I need to make sure that all these shapes get removed because I'm going to be creating a new one. Now, all these shapes have been grouped and they're all called job group. And then they have the job number, the ID that's associated with that order ID or job. If I interchange the word job and order, they're the same thing. Order and job are the same thing. I probably should use one, but keep that in mind. They're exactly the same. Job ID, order ID, exactly the same. So it is an ID that's associated. That way we get a unique name for each one on our map. So this one's called job group 11, etc. Inside that we see we have job name, we have tech picture. So they're always associated with that ID number of that job or order. Okay, so that's how we create them unique. But they all have something very in common. They all start with job group. So if I want to delete them all I need to do is check for every shape that includes the word job group and then delete it. And that's just what we did here for each job shape in shapes. On air, resume next just in case there's an issue. We're going to look for any shape that contains the name job group. If it's found, meaning greater than 0, then we're going to delete it. So that's going to do this. So if I run this macro, it's going to delete them all. And you see that we have brand new, everything's been deleted up until that point, everything. So we've got a nice clean. Keep that in mind that we do need to keep these sample shapes. Make sure that your sample shapes don't have those words inside the names because otherwise you would delete them, okay? So everything gets created. So now as we continue through the macro, running through it, we can see that everything gets refreshed and recreated inside there. So continuing on, again, what we want to do is I want to clear all the previous results, right? So we have our previous results directly here. All of our results for that particular one are going to come right inside here, starting with AA3 all the way through A8. So what I want to do is I want to delete all of them, clearing out those results, getting you ready for new. So here, this line of code will take care of that. I want to determine the last row based on all of our data. If it's less than 4, exit the sub. Again, I want to make sure that I need to know those technician types, and I need to bring down those formulas. This is the one that we discussed right here. So M4 all the way to the last row is simply the formula of those equal to whatever's in M2. Bringing down that technician formula, this line of code will take care of that for us. M4 through M in the last row formula is equal to whatever formula is in M2. This is our technician type formula. Very important when we want to filter based on that type. Okay, so we bring down the formula. Now we're ready to run our advanced filter. All we're going to do is A3 through M, bring it all the way through M, and our criteria is going to go directly through M. We're making sure to include that tech type. Our criteria is going to be right here inside this right here. V2 all the way through W3. So that's our criteria, or V2 through W3. And we're going to have those results come AA2 through AG, A2 through AG. We want unique true. We're going to determine the last results row, column AA, right? This is going to be our last row. I want to know the last results row. In this case, it's 30. Once I know that row, I also want to bring down the picture, right? If I'm going to be adding that, again, just like we did on the original data, we look in our technicians. Our technicians have a picture associated with them in column L, and I have a named range for that. If we look in formula, name manager, okay, and we take a look inside the tech, we have a name range called tech picture. I want to use a formula to extract that tech picture. If I know inside our order database, if I know that the technician here, I can use index to extract the picture for that. All I need to do is take that formula and put it up here. So we're using that index tech picture based on AF, based on that technician name, using the match and extracting that picture, bringing down the picture formula for all that. If I know the picture name all the way into the last row, and then if I combine that picture name along with the folder in which those are located, and I've got that right here. So all of our tech pictures, let's bring that up in here. And so inside our technician folder right here, we can see the technician folder. These are all the pictures that were associated. So I've got those pictures. I just need to make sure that this folder is mapped directly and then make sure that the names are accurate. So I have that inside there. So when I combine this folder along with this name here, we have a complete file path for our picture, and we can place our technician's picture there. Okay, great. So we have that there. And now what we want to do is we'll continue that. So that's why we are going to place that formula right here. Once we determine the last row of our results, we're going to take that formula for the tech picture, that name, and we're going to put it in all the results row. And that's simply going to bring down all of these results. Once we have that, we are ready to go. I want to create the initial unmapped top position. What do I mean by that? I've got a position double variable called unmapped top, right? If I'm going to be tracking all of those particular jobs or orders that are not currently mapped, I need to start at a top position, right? I don't want them on top of each other, so I need to put the first one here, then here, then here, then here, right? So I'm going to start at the first one. I'll put the first one right about, let's take a look here, in A in column 6, row 6. Row 6 is fine. So that's where our first one's going to be. So we're going to put that into a variable. So our unmapped top is the top position of A6. That's going to set that initial map position. As we add more jobs to that unmapped, right, we're just going to increment that going down and down. So now we're ready to run our results. So basically, I'm ready to run a loop for all of our results. Our results are going to start in row 3, go all the way to the last row. We're going to run a loop going all the way, creating brand new shapes for each of those projects and orders. First thing what I want to do is through a loop, I want to extract some information. That's very important so that I can get it. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to get an order ID. That's very important because we're going to need to label our shapes uniquely based on that order ID. So that order ID is going to come from AA. I also wanted the job name, very important because I want to put the job name in that shape, and that's going to come from AB, and the status is going to come from AC. Why is the status important? The status is important because I want to assign a color to that, right? I want to assign a border color based on the status. So pending is going to get yellow, schedule is going to, I should put that up properly. It's not in the correct column. I'll show you. Why don't we fix that right now? Okay, so it's appearing right. That's going to be on our admin. We want that in column D. So I'm going to take a look at the admin. On selection change, right, I want to place that color palette. So if we shapes color palette, we see visible equals false. So I want to place that not in column G. I want to place it in column D. So that's much better. So color palette's going to show up right here. All right, that way if I change the name or change the color, we see the pending. I want to make sure that those colors get automatically added. If I know that it's pending, I want to determine the row. I'm going to look for that, right? We see that we have a named range called status, right? If I go into the formulas and I go into named manager and I look under status here, I see that I've got a dynamic named range based on status. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for that status. Using the find, I'm going to determine what row it's on. If I know what row it's on, I'm going to look in column D. I'm going to extract the color from that cell. If I extract color, I know what to color the border. So when I refresh the map, it's automatically going to do that. So if I decide to move it, and now we see, look, these are all red. Notice the red because I changed that color, right? So these are all pending, right? So you can see it. If I were to go back to admin, I change it back to yellow again, and go back into our job map, and I just simply refresh it. We can refresh by this. That will refresh it. Now they're all yellow. Okay, great. So we see how that works, but again, we know we need the row. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to extract that row directly. So let's go back to where we were now that we have that. So we're going to extract that status row. I'm going to wrap this in on air resume next and on air go to 0 because we're using the find command. If it's not found, it could create an error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the status. And where am I going to look? I'm going to look for inside this named range called status, right? Generally, I should probably not use different variables and named ranges. Sometimes this is an issue. This time it's working fine. So our variable name status, our named ranges, name status, I try to use different ones usually, but it seems to work okay. So what we want to do, then I need to know if it's been found, status row is not going to be 0, right? And it has been found. So then we can assign a color. This is a string variable, and we're going to assign that string variable to whatever colors in column D and that specific row. We're going to take the interior color of that cell. That is a string variable. It's a number. We're going to place that number directly in here. Once I know that status color, I know what color to color that border. Okay, great. Now what I want to do is I want to get the left position, and I want to get, let's continue on with our results here. I want to get the left position from AD, and I want to get the top position from AE. So that's going to be the left location and the top location. So, but I want to know if either one of them is 0, we need to map it, right? If either one of these are blank, right, or 0, then we need to know we're going to place it directly inside this column here. Otherwise, we can place it on our map. Okay, so we're going to check here. If the left position equals 0 or the top position equals, set the unmapped position. So the left position is always going to be A1. The left position will never change. The top position is going to be based on that unmapped top position. Remember, we set it initially up here to row 6, up all the way up here, directly here. We set it to row 6 here, but that will change as we add more. So the top position is going to be able to unmap. Then what we're going to do is we're going to increment the unmapped top position because we don't want them on top of each other. So we're going to add 25 pixels so they show up lower and lower, right? If we were to create this to, let's say, 45, right? That would be too much, but we can see the difference in how that would apply. All I need is just check one of these, and we can see that there's now a lot of separation between them. So adding that number is going to show us how much we want to increment that down, okay? Okay, so once we have that, we're setting that. We've set the unmapped, the top position, and we set those positions. So the left position and the top position are now set regardless if it is on the map or in the unmapped area, it's automatically set. I want to set that picture path. The picture path is going to be based on that picture folder, right? We've already set the picture folder up here all the way at the top. It's going to be based on all the way up here. Sorry, I almost missed that line. Picture folder is based on the tech folder. That tech folder is right here inside the admin called tech folder. This is a named range called tech folder. So that was the first thing we did. Sorry, I kind of skipped that, didn't I? Tech folder right here, picture folder. This is going to be set technician picture folder. Great, so we've got that set up. We set that in a variable. So what I want to do to this, I want to add a backslash and I want to add the name onto that. That's going to get that full file path. So the picture path of that file, the picture folder, along with the backslash, along with whatever's located in AH. AH is that name right here. It's that picture name right here. So we've got the full file path, okay? So now we're ready to focus on the job map. So this is our focus now switches to the job map. The first thing we want to do is start duplicating some of these sample items. So the first thing what we want to do is I want to set that map icon. We're going to take this map icon here, map icon sample. We're going to duplicate it. So the first thing we want to do, map icon sample, duplicate it. We're going to give it a very unique name. It's going to be called map icon, and then it's going to be called the order ID. Remember, this order ID is unique for every order. Okay, so where are we going to place this? I'm going to place this directly on the left position and the top position. Okay, so that's very easy to place because we've already set those. Remember, that left position is going to be regardless if it's on the map or if it's in the unmapped location here. Now we reset those so we can set them back to there. Okay, So that map position is already set. Now it's very, very easy. So now our icon's in the right place. Now what I want to do is I want to create that name. I want to duplicate this one, job name sample, and place a job name. So the job name shape. Shapes, job name sample, duplicate, job name, and the order ID. Again, giving it a very unique name. Okay, so now we can focus on that one. With that one, we're going to assign some text to it. What is that? The job name. We've already set that job name based directly on here, all the way up here, job name here. So that job name's already been set based on the results AB. If we remember here, AB is going to take on that job name. So we've already set that up here. And so we're going to basically take this and just put that job name directly inside as text. And we can do that right here in the text name. Text frame 2, text range text equals the job name. I want to set the auto size shape fit text to make sure it sets the fixed width, right? And I also want to set the height to a very fixed height at 15 pixels. I want to set the left position based on the left position, but I want to move it a little bit over to the right, right? I don't want it right on top of that. And I also want to set the top position based on the top position, but a little bit all the way down, a little bit below that, 17 pixels. So that's going to set the top and the left position of that. And then the status color. If the status color does not equal empty, remember this is a string variable including numbers for the color. Then we're going to use the line, right? We're already on this shape. The line of that, the forecolor of that line, the RGB color of that line is going to be whatever that status color is, but only if it doesn't equal empty. That's going to set the line color. So that way each one can have unique line colors based on the status. I know Sammy wants me to put a legend here, but I kind of ran out of space. I'll get to that maybe on the feature fix. Where am I going to put a legend here? It's already full. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe all the way up here. I know I probably should include a legend because otherwise the legend is basically what this is, right? This is our legend here, but it certainly would be nice to include it here. I'll do that just for you, Sammy, eventually. Continuing on. So what we want to make sure of is we want to set that tech icon now, right? The icon's nice, right? I want to have that tech picture in there. So we have the sample of that here. It's called tech pic sample. So I want to duplicate that. I'm going to duplicate it even if there's no picture. So I'm going to put that so let's take a look at this. Let's see if there's an error. I didn't check this. So if this is kind of important, if I decide to mess up that folder, right, that path is now incorrect. And we'll fix any errors that comes up because this will be an error for you if it does come up, because the path is now correct. So the idea is I want to make sure that only this icon shows up and not the pictures, right? So if I decide to refresh this, I want to make sure that that's exactly what I want. I want the icon to show up and no pictures, right? So if you don't have any pictures, the icon will be fine. As soon as we make the correction on the path, right, then everything will show up correctly. So when we don't have a correct path, which is fine, we certainly don't want any errors when we have a correct path. We just want to show the default. So when we have the correct path, all the pictures show up. So to make sure that we do have a correct path, I want to duplicate that icon. And then I want to focus on, I want to place it. So we've already duplicated that little round circle with shapes and given it a very unique name using the words TechPic and order ID. Then what I want to do is I want to make sure that the pathway of that picture is correct. If the directory picture of the path does not equal empty, and I want to make sure that AH contains a value, right? We certainly need to make sure that our results here, there's a value inside AH. Once we know we have a value there in AH, we want to make sure, then what we can do is we can continue on inserting it because we know that it is a correct path. So we're going to take this particular shape that we're working with, this shape tech, and what we're going to do is we're going to fill it with a picture. So we're going to do .fill, .userPicture. We're going to fill it based on the picture path. Add user picture if it's available. Okay, so we're only putting a picture in if it's a good pathway. Everything else, regardless, we're going to set the left position based on the current left position plus 1.75. And what that's going to do is just going to place it slightly down, slightly to the right, right? And then I also want to place it slightly off the top, right? So to do that, we're going to place the top position plus 1. So that's going to set it just a little bit down right in the middle of that mapped icon. Okay, great. So then what I want to do, the last thing, now I've done everything. I've done the three things. I've placed the picture, I've placed the map icon, and I've placed the job name. But what I want to do is I want to group them because when we drag and drop, I want to make sure that when we can move and we move it as a group. So it's very important to group them. So I'm going to group them all together. So we're going to do that just now. So grouping everything inside a single group, what I want to do is I want to create an array. So we're going to take the map icon, we're going to take the job name, the tech picture, and the order, we're going to group it all together. Okay, and that's where we're going to group everything together. So once we create this array, we're going to group it. Then we're going to give it a specific name using the job group and order ID. Remember, that's a unique job group, giving it that very, very specific name because that is the same name that we're going to be using to delete all those groups when we certainly refresh it. So that's it. So that's all we have to do. Make sure we set the status color to empty because as we loop through all the statuses. So that's all we have to do to create this and through that loop and create all those shapes on the base, on the top and left location exactly as, and of course unique to every ID. And of course, we've always added a macro to that. Now there's already macros that are assigned to each of these. If we take a look at these, because I want to do something, when I select something, I want something to happen. What do I want to happen? Well, what I want to do is I want to add these icons, this group here, this job edit sample, I want to add that to that. And I also want to group everything together and I want to select it. And that selecting it makes it a lot easier for the user to move it and reset it. And that's it. So how do we do that? Well, that's of course a macro called selection. And that's the next macro that we're going to be going over. And it's right here called map select order. It is that same macro that's already been assigned to these individual icons here. If we assign it to the individual icons, we don't need to assign it through VBA as we create them, because when we duplicate these shapes, the macro that's already assigned also gets duplicated with them. So we don't need to assign a macro again. So when we select that, something will happen. The first thing what I want to do is I want to extract the order ID. Now let's take a look at some of the names. Now we're going to focus on these three shapes. This one, and this one. Now I've given it very unique names onto this. So if we take a look at this, we see this is called map icon sample. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to go through in here, not there. These we've given very unique names. Once they get duplicated, this one's called job name 3. Okay. This one is called, let's go unselect this one here. And this one's called tech pick 3. Okay, so unselect this. And now that map icon, this map icon called map icon 3. Now there's something very unique about those three names. They all start out with 7 characters. Map icon, and we also have tech picture. So tech pick here, 7 characters, then the ID. Same thing here, 7 characters and the ID. So what if I want to extract the ID? If I take those first 7 characters and I delete them or remove them from a string, anything that's left is our order ID. So I've named them very, very specifically with 7 characters, then the ID. So if I want to extract that order ID and I make a selection onto any one of those, whether I'm selecting here or selecting here or selecting here, I want to extract, take the name of that shape that I've selected. The name of the shape that I've selected is used application caller. Application caller. Keep that in mind. Remember, if you run this macro, you're going to get an error because we haven't selected any shape. Application caller is the name of the shape that we've selected. However, if we run the macro by selecting a shape, there's no problem at all. So once what I do is I want to get that order ID. So I'm going to take the name of that shape and I'm going to use the replace command. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the left 7 characters of that name, and I'm going to replace them with nothing. Let's go over that again because there's more than one thing going on. I'm going to take the name of the shape that I've selected, and I'm going to replace something inside of it. What am I going to replace? I'm going to replace the first 7 characters, first meaning left, 7 characters of that name, 7 characters of that name. And I'm going to replace them with nothing. Once I do that, it'll leave me with just the order ID. I'm going to take that order ID and I'm going to put it into BM4. This is a little bit of an admin column. I'm going to put it directly in here. This is BM4. We don't really need to see the headings in this case, but you can see just for our purpose now BM4 and BM5. So, but generally we don't. And notice that I've given a very, very small columns here. Notice they're all two very, very small. What I want to do is I want to create square, pretty much square. So I've given them that way it's going to show up much easier. But we don't need to see the columns. In fact, if you have this, you will want to hide the columns. Certainly, you will not want to have users changing columns. So you would, if you're selling an application that uses a map, you cannot have them change columns. It will mess everything up. As long as we hide the columns and protect the sheet, there's no problem with that. Okay, so keep that in mind that this is BM4 and BM5. So otherwise, we don't need to see those headings, okay? So what we want to do is I want to place that selected order ID inside BM4. And I also want to extract the order row. I want to know the order row, right? If we're going to edit that order row, it could be helpful to know the row or we want to make changes to that. It could be helpful to know that row. And that row is located here using the match formula. Okay, so once we place that inside BM4, we know the order ID is located there. Then what I want to do is I want to ungroup and delete it next time. Now what happens? What do I mean by that? Well, basically when I select something, I want to take this and I want to create a brand new group, right? That brand new group is called selected job group. Notice to change the name, selected job group. So what I want to do is if I select that group, I don't want to automatically delete it. So I just want to make sure if there's something called selected group automatically, meaning the groups already exist, I want to delete it. So we're going to look for that just to make sure. If shapes, well, we're going to wrap it in on air resume next in case it doesn't exist. But if the selected group and the job, if it exists, we're going to ungroup it and we're going to delete it, right? So that means that I want to group it again. So notice it's already selected. If I click here, it's going to ungroup, and I'll show you that macro. So if it's selected once, if I select it again, I just want to make sure that it's ungrouped and deleted. So that's all we're going to be doing here. Ungroup that and delete it. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take that duplicate, that sample, that job edit sample. What is that? It means that this group right here, this sample group here of those 4 different icons, it's called job edit sample. So I'm going to take those and I'm going to duplicate it because I want to create them right here. So when I do that, I'm going to duplicate that and then we're going to work with it. First thing what I want to do is I want to group the items. I want to give it a very specific name, right? So take a look at this. Now what they've been done is group. So I want to give it a very specific name. What do I mean by that? So up to this step, all I've done is I've duplicated it, but I want to give each item inside, right? Each item, this item, this item, and this item, very, very specific names. So for example, show route sample. I want to give that a very specific name. What name am I going to give it? So let's do this one first because show us slightly different. Save job sample. Okay, I've got one called edit job sample. Let's zoom into that a little bit so we can see that. And the other, and also zooming in totally messes things up too. So you want to probably remove that and remove zoom if you're going to be selling it. Look, zoom. Okay, so keep that. And of course we have closed job sample. Okay, before I get dizzy, I'm going to break it back to underset. So we have 3 different. So what I want to do is I want to rename each one individually. Why is that important? Because if I select this one, I need to know which one it is, right? Because I've got, look at this, I've got 2. I want to make sure that they get renamed. So notice this is called Save Job 26. And notice this one is called Save Job 3, right? So we need to rename them based on the job ID. So that's just what we're going to do. So the group items, meaning it's part of a bigger group, right? We're focused on this bigger group now, edit job group in the order ID. We've already renamed it here. That group is going to also get unique names. Each item, the save job, the edit job, and the close job, those 3 icons are going to get unique names called save jobs, edit job, and close job. Okay, very, very important. Again, also notice that each one also has 7 characters. 7 characters, 7 characters. Makes it a little bit easier, but we can also differentiate between that. But that's going to help us extract that information and the order ID. Okay, again, I want to set the position based on the left, right? So basically, I want to use these to set the left and the top position. And so I just use it. That's going to set this position of this group exactly where I want based on the left position, right? So we want to base it on the left here and the top position here. So setting the left position and the top position based on that so that we group them exactly together because that's exactly where I want to show up. That car is going to show up a little bit later on. So that's what we want to do. So left position group and that -40, right? Because I want the left position based on what? Based on the job group and the left position of the job group and also based on the width of that job group, right? So because I want it to show up here, right? Based on this is the job group, I want the left position plus the entire width, but -40, so it moves back over to the left a little bit. All right, great. So then all we want to do is I want to create a group, right? I want to take this particular group and this, and I want to create a group from we've already duplicated it. I want to create a single group, and then give it a name. So to do that, we're going to take the job group, that original job group, we're going to take that edit job group, those 2 groups, and we're going to group them into one group together. And we're going to group it here using this. We're going to give it a specific name called selected job group in the order ID, right? That's how it differentiates between this group, which is called job group, but this group is called selected job group. So it's a little bit different, so we know the differentiation between that. So we know which ones are selected. Okay, great. So now that we have that, the last thing we want to do is simply select it. Take that brand new job group that we just created and select it. So that way when let's close this out and close this out. So when we select something, it just selects that group. And that makes it a lot easier to move it around and then check it. And then we know it's been moved. Okay, great. So we understand how we are creating those groups and how we create it on selection. So again, selection simply adds in, it renames those icons, and it groups everything together, and then it selects it. Cool, so we got that. Now what we want to do is I want to show the route. What about showing the route? This is a particular macro that's already been assigned to this car here. I got two cars. So this is called show route sample, right? And there's already a macro that's already assigned to this. Let's click assign macro, and we see it's called show route. That is the macro that I'm going to go over with you right now. That is the macro that allows us to automatically show the route, automatically going over that. So it shows this entire route from point to point. So we see that Fred, I think this is Fred, he's moving from 3 different positions in that day. And we also want to take this and we want to create this connector and connect those so we can see his entire route. And we want that little car to move accordingly. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So first of all, I want a delay is double and a start time is double, right? I need to know the start time. I'm going to focus on the orders database. So the idea is this, right? So I want to know only for this specific technician. I want to run, so we have all of our orders, right? These are all the orders in a day. So what I want to do is I want to know only the route for that specific technician. For that specific technician here, and I also want to know I want to make sure that we're showing a route for only orders that contain a left location and contain a top, right? If they don't contain, if they're not located on the map, we're not going to show the route, right? I don't want to show the route for any particular jobs that haven't been mapped yet, right? I only want to show those. So we want to make sure that anything that we're mapping does contain a right? If it doesn't have a top location map, we certainly don't want to map. You wouldn't want to create the route for that. So we want to make sure that those 3 criteria. So we only want to know, so how are we going to do that? Well, first thing what we're going to do is we're going to run an advanced filter. The last row is going to be based on the results of AA, right? Those are our results. Inside our last results show, this time we're running an advanced filter, but we're basing it on these results here. Okay, so we're going to get the last column, and then what we're going to be doing is I want to know based on a specific technician. How do we know that technician? Well, if we look inside BM5, if we remember on our map, right, here's BM5. So BM5 is the selected order row. If I know the order row, the row that's sorted on, I can extract the technician from it, right? Row 13 inside our orders database, if I look here inside row 13, we know that the technician here is Larry Daniels based on the row 13. So I'm going to use index to determine that. So we can get that, extract that inside our orders database here using just that, Larry Daniels. Using the index based on the order tech, the named range, whatever the row is located in BM5 minus 3, remember we're minusing 3 because our first one starts on row 4. Okay, so we're subtracting 3 from that. And what that's going to do in the single column is going to extract the technician based on whatever the selected row. That's why it's important when we select it, we need to know the row that's associated with that. And that way we can simply run that macro all the way automatically. Okay, so if we select it and we have a car. Okay, so we can show the car going automatically because we know the row and we know the technician. So how are we going to do that? So once we have all of our criteria set, which is done through formulas, then all we want is those results. I want to know the results, and it's going to come here. So we know that on this day, this technician is going to go to 3 different jobs. Once I have those results, I want to sort them by order, by time, right? I want to know the first, the second, and the third, so that I know that Sandy Beach job is the first one, then Betty White, then John James. So that way, that's going to be, so inside the map, right, we know that Sandy Beach is the first job. So if we take a look here, we know that this is the first one. So when we select, I think that was the first one, we know that's the first one. So I want the car to move from the Sandy job to the Betty White job and then to the John James job. So that's the order that I want, but I want to make sure that it's in the time order, right? So we certainly want to sort it by the time. That way here, then we want to make sure that the 6 a.m. job is first, the 7 a.m. job is second, and 9 a.m. is the third job. So we also need to sort it. So that's exactly what we're going to do inside the code. Okay, so let's take a look back inside here. Once we determine the row, the last results row based on column AA, we're going to run an advanced filter. That advanced filter is going to be based on that data that I've mentioned here from AA all the way through AH2. We want that criteria AJ2 through AL3 here. And then we want the results coming from AN2 through AS2. So the results are going to come here. I'm going to determine the last row of results, AN. And then if it's less than 3, we're going to exit the sub out. right? If it's less than 4, that means there's only one row of result, and we don't need to sort because there's only one row. However, if there's more than one row, we do need to sort, and I want to sort it based on, of course, those times, right? I want the earliest, so it's going to be ascending, not descending, because I want the earliest time first. So we're going to run that sort based on the orders. AP3 is our times, and the results here, the range that is going to be AN3 through AS in the last results row. So that's going to set them up. So let's put a little note here. Sort based on earliest time first. Good. So now we've sorted, now we're ready to run it. So all we need to do is go from one location to the other. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to extract the tech name. That's going to come from AJ3. I just want to put that into a variable. Okay, and I also want the job map. Now focus on the job map car route sample. Here's where we're going to duplicate that car route sample. If we take a look inside our job map, we have a shape called car, a little icon called car route sample. I want to duplicate that, and I want to give it a specific name. So if we take a look, let's say in this one is called show route sample. So we just duplicate that. Once it's duplicated, we can then run the results row. So now for the results, we could probably rename it here, duplicate name. So once it gets duplicated, it's going to get renamed, right? This one, of course, is going to stay the same. We don't need to reduplicate this one because this is only the macro. However, when we run it, this particular car here, this one right here, the one that's moving here, it's going to have a specific name. There we go. So this one has a very specific, then it's going to be gone. So that particular car has a very specific name. It's going to be called tech route and the tech name, tech route and the tech name. So we're going to focus on that. Now we're going to run a loop from 3 to the last results row -1. What does that mean? That means I'm going to run our tech route. Oops, they don't have any data there. Let's choose somewhere where we got some data or the database. So here we go. So what I want to do is I want to run from the 3 to the last results row -1. So I'm going to run it from 3, in this case, to 4. I'm going to extract the information from here, and I'm going to extract the information from the next job. And then I'm going to loop it again from this job, and I'm going to extract the information from here because I need to go from here to here, and then from here to here. So that's all we're going to do. So order ID is going to be, the first order ID is going to be AN and the result row. That's our first order ID. Our next order ID is going to be AN, the result row +1, right? Our order ID is 15. Our next order ID is 27. Okay, so we're going to put those in two variables. I want the starting left position and I want the starting top position. So it's going to be AQ3 in the first one, and our top location is AR. I also want to know our next left location and our next top location. I'm going to put those into variables. So our next left location is going to be AQ and the result row +1. And I also want to add in 20. Why is that important? Well, because I don't want it to exactly over the left position, right? So we notice that a left position here on the map, our left position is basically the left position of this. But when I click on that car, I don't want that car to start on the left position. I want to start right about where it's located. So when I click here, let's use one with it. Oh, that's not the first job. Remember, it's always going to go from the first job, right? Okay, this Sandy Beach, this is the first job. So basically, I don't want the car to start on the left. I want the car to start right about where it currently is. So if I click here, notice the car starts right where the car is, and it moves over to the left, right? So I want to move it there and then down. So it starts, I want to move it to about 20 pixels to the right. So that's why we're giving it that 20. So it's going to be whatever the left position is +20, and the top position will be the same. So we're going to have all of that here. And we also have 50 when it's that starting left position. So we want those starting left positions there. But I also want to set the initial left position, and the initial stop position could be the start left. So the left position is going to be wherever we're starting from, and the top position is going to be wherever we're starting. So we're setting this initial. So now we're going to focus on the job map. And we want to add in the connectors too. Those connectors are sample. I've got a connector here called connector sample. And what I want to do is I want to take this connector. Let's duplicate it here just for the fun of it here. And I want to take this connector. I want to connect it to the two jobs. So let's zoom in. And so what I want to do, let's just say these two jobs are connected. I want to connect this to this connector. So this particular map icon, I want to connect it to this, but I want to connect it to not the picture. This would be the picture. I want to connect it to the map icon. This is point 1. This is point 2, and this is point 3. So I want to connect it here. And then I want whatever the next icon is, whatever that next job is, I want to connect it again. The same thing, point 1, point 2, point 3. I want to connect to the third point. I want to connect it here. So basically, I want to make a connection just like that, but I want to do it inside VBA. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that because we know the job, the next job, and we also know the first job, right? So if I know, let's just say the first job, let's say the first job here was map icon 24. So it's job number 24. And let's say the next one, the job number was map 1, right? So we know we're going to go from job 24 to job 1. So I know the icon is going to be map icon 1 to map icon 24. So since I know the job names, I know which one to connect it to. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take that shape, that sample shape, and we're going to duplicate it. We're going to give it a very specific name. We're going to call it job connection. And I'm going to use the first order ID and I'm going to use the next order ID. Remember, we got both order IDs here, order ID here, and the next one's going to be from the row down. We're not only going to the second to the last row, so that way we always have data. Okay? We're not going to the last row, we're going to the second to the last row. So we're creating this connector based on the existing order ID and the next order ID. And then it's very simple. Then we're going to take that job connector, the one that we just created, okay, using those two order IDs, we're going to set the connector format. We're going to set that beginning connect based on the map icon. Remember that map icon and the order ID. And we're going to set it on the third position. Remember the positions. The top is 1, the left is 2, and the bottom is 3. That's the third position. So that is the position we're setting it up on. Okay. And then all we're going to do is the next order ID is that next map icon. We're going to use that as the end connector. We're going to set the job shapes. Remember, we must call out the sheet and the shape again, okay, the map icon, and we're setting it to the third position again. So it's very easy to add that connector. Okay, so we've added the connector. Now I want to move the car. Time to move the car. Drive the car. Okay, so we're going to drive the car, and we're going to use, let's say, 100. We could probably reduce this a little bit to make it a little bit quicker. It's a little bit slow, right? So let's say 80, but if we wanted, we'll keep it at 100 now, but we want to make sure, because it's a little bit simpler with the math. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the shapes, tech route, and tech name. That's that car that got duplicated. Remember, we took this sample car. We got too many cars here. So it's going to be, this is a good sample because we got it. So we took this car, we given it a name called tech route and the name. So we've taken this car here and given the specific name. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move this car accordingly. Nice big car there. So I want to move that car, but what do I want to move it to? I want to move it to the existing left position to the next one. So we can do that with a little bit of math. So we're gonna focus on that. We're gonna set that initial left position and that initial top position. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to move it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're gonna set a delay to make things a little bit slower. We're gonna set a timer and we're gonna do events so that the car moves. And we're simply gonna loop it while the start time is less than the delay. So what we're going to do is we're gonna set that left position. We're gonna keep resetting this left position. It's gonna be the starting left position. Right, where's that starting? So basically, I need to move it from the starting left position to the next left position. I need to know the difference between those two positions. What's the difference between the starting left position and the next left position? So I'm going to take that difference there and I'm going to divide it by 100. Why 100? Because I'm moving it 100 times, right? If I want to make it faster, I can choose that down to 50. So if I do 50 here, I want to make sure to do 50 here, change it to 50 here, and I want to change it to 50 here. And now it's going to be a lot faster, right? So if I choose that route, see, now it's a lot faster. I kind of like that better. Okay, we'll also probably reset that delay. So it's a little bit faster there, okay? So we're going to move that car, increment how many times, right? And then we're going to take it. I need to know how many increments, how many positions to increment. This will determine it. The difference, right? If we're moving at 100 pixels and we're dividing it by 50, that means we're going to move it 2 pixels every time. And I'm going to multiply that 2 pixels by however many loops we have. So this move car, so it'll go from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so on and so forth. So we're going to increment both the left position and both the top position using the same formula, the same math, except we're using the difference. This time we're differentiating between the destination top position and the original top position. So this is how it'll move it from one position to the other. That's all we have to do is move it out. And then the last thing, what we're going to do is just we're going to delete that car, right? We don't need that car anymore. Once I've clicked on here, it's going to remove that car and we can remove that car. It'll just delete it automatically. Great. Let's refresh the schedule so we can clear it out. And I'm going to clear this sample. This is the sample I used for you. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to do. You can delete. And also, last thing is I have to remove those lines, right? We want to remove those lines. So because we have specific lines, we don't know how many lines got created, how many connectors based on the route. So we need to run a loop to do that. So we're going to delete those connectors. So for each job and shape, we've given those connectors a very specific name called job connector, right? Remember, when we duplicated them up here, we give them a very specific name called job connector, then the order ID. So using that same name, we can then delete it. So for each job shape in the job map shapes, if the connector name's job connector is greater than 0, then delete it. It means any shape with the text job connector inside, we're automatically going to delete. So we delete the connectors. So that's how we create that little moving car. Very, very cool. All right, next up, I've got some more great information for you. Let's continue on with the save location. If you noticed, what I want to do is I want to move that. So when I make a change, I want to maybe be able to move it, right? If I decide that Nancy, or let's take one of those ones here. If I decide I want to set this garage remodel on the map and I want to set it right here, I want to make sure to save it. There's a macro. I want to save that location. This particular macro that's assigned to this button is the one that's going to do it. If I click assign macro, we see it's called map save location, because I want to do, when I collect it, I want to make sure that that top and left position of this particular job gets saved inside the order database on the original data. I want to make sure to save it both here in column K and column L, get the left position and get the top position so that those get saved. And so we can do that with just a little bit of code inside that. So let's go ahead and go back to the job map and inside the code and see how we're going to do that. Well, again, we need to know that order ID, right? Remember, there's very, very specific names I've given it that, right? If I take the first 7 characters out, we know it's going to leave us with that order ID. So if I click save, it's going to get saved automatically. So we're going to do, first we're going to extract the order ID from the name of the shape that call it. We're going to, we're simply going to remove save job. Actually, we're just going to remove the word save job, right? Everything else, right? Let's click on here again and show you that one more time. If I remove the text save job, that also is going to leave. So there's 2 ways to do it. Save job is fine. I'm going to remove that. It's going to leave me with the specific job order ID. So now that we have that, we're simply going to take that save job, we're going to replace it with nothing using the replace command. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that order ID, I'm going to put it in BM4 inside our job map. I'm going to get the order row. It's going to be in BM5. Remember, we've calculated this BM5 all the way over here. So we have now the order ID. We have now the order row. We're going to put those into, if I know, now I know that the row is associated with this very, very easily. So if I know the row and I know the current left position and I know the current top position, all I need to do is place those in columns K and L associated. So column K of that order row is going to take on this shape, the selected job group. We know the name, we know the order ID, so we know the left position of this. So we're going to do the same thing with the top position. This is going to go in column L. So we're simply going to place the left location in column K. We're going to place the top location in column L based on whatever the location is inside this for this particular. And we also know the name of this shape because we know it's job group. We've already extracted the order ID, so we know automatically what the shape is and where it's located. Then also great, once we're done with that, once I've saved it, right? What I want to do is I want to then remove this group associated with this, remove this edit group like this. You see that edit group move away. We have it back. So we only need that edit group when we've selected it. Once we've saved it, so I can do that. So I'm going to ungroup it and delete it. So the first thing, that selected job, ungrouping it. So that's going to ungroup. And then all we need to do is that portion of the group, edit job group, we're going to delete that portion of it. So we're deleting this group, these icons, part of the group. We're deleting that. We don't need that anymore. That's it. That's all we have to do. And of course, we're going to run the macro that's simply going to refresh those jobs. And that's going to refresh everything. So just going to click on here. It's going to refresh everything. And that new location has now been saved because it is now saved in the database. Very cool. Editing jobs is very simple. There's a macro that's tied to this little pencil. If I click here, I want to then edit those jobs and create this. And I want that job order. I want that order ID to go directly into B3. And then I'm going to run the macro to load the order. Very, very simple as long as I know the order ID. And that's just what we can do in here. The order ID is simply, again, this time we're going to replace the words edit job. If we replace that with nothing, it's going to leave us with that order ID. Again, I'm going to put that order ID in BM4, probably not necessary this step. So what I'm going to do is oh yeah, it is kind of necessary for this step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the job. I'm going to ungroup it just like we did before. And then I'm going to delete the group, right? We're done with that edit group. And then what I'm going to do, now this step isn't necessary here. We don't need the row associated with that. So then all I need to do is on the orders B3, put in that order ID, and then activate the order screen and then run the macro. So all we need to do is just simply to edit job, select on a job, click on that edit icon. It's going to go directly there, and it's going to load up that job. Very, very simple. Okay, cool. Now that we have that, I also want to close the edit, right? If I decide I don't want to edit this anymore, I just want to close the edit. This little one right here, I want to close it. So this one is called close job 503. Again, doing exactly the same, extracting that order job, in this case, removing the text, replacing the text close job with nothing. It's going to extract that order ID. If I know the order ID, I can then ungroup that select job group in the order, ungrouping that and deleting the edit group very, very easily. So all I need to do there is just going to remove the rest of the group, and just leave it just exactly where it is. All right, very good. Now we got previous day, next day, and today. Very, very easy macros. Previous day here, all we're going to do is just reduce this by 1. Right? Today is simply going to take the current date and put it in here. I don't have much data on the current date. Next day there. Very, very simple macro. All we need to do is make a change to the map date. Once we've done that, it'll automatically update accordingly. So that's just what we're going to do in these 3 macros. Those are the 3 macros that have been assigned to that. So our previous day is simply E2, which is where these are date. This is E2 here. Our job date, simply going to take E2 minus 1, just subtracting whatever's there. Next day, we're simply adding 1. And then, of course, the current date is for today. So those are the 3 macros that are associated with that. All right, that's cool. We got that covered. Now all we need to do is just finish up with our dashboard and our home screen. Cool. All right, you guys are doing great. Appreciate you sticking with us on these trainings. All right, this is a relatively simple dashboard. It's no code because it's all going to originate its data from our database here, from our orders database here. If we take a look inside our orders database table, we see we've created a table name called order data. This is going to encompass all the data. What we can then do is create different pivot tables based on that data. So if we take a look inside the table design, we've created some things. So if I were to insert a pivot table, just as we did before, based on that order table, and we're going to go into an existing worksheet. So that's basically all we did with each one of them. So if we take a look inside, everything got created based on our sheets called pivot tables here. So if I were to enter a new one here, I could do just that here and create a pivot table. So all we did is create pivot tables based on this one here. So I've got a pivot table here, and this pivot table is called status. So the first one I want jobs by status. So I'm going to take all the order IDs and go into values. I basically want to know all the orders. We're simply going to count the order IDs. So we want to count. And I want to know based on status. So our status is going to go directly in here in status. So that's it. It's simply going to count the status. And then we're simply going to sort it based. So I've done a sort, and I want the largest to smallest. Then I've created a pretty much simple bar graph based on that. So if we take a look inside our dashboard and we have status, we just have a little bit of a bar graph based on that. So I've got a bar graph. Here's the same one based on the status. So I'm just moving it over here to the left so we can see it. And I've created a bar chart based on that. Simple bar chart based on that. Not a whole lot of complexity going into that. And of course, it's based on that, based on the status and the order ID. And then I'll just give it a fill. If we go into the formats, let me take a look at some of the fills so we can format those data labels. And we see that we have here inside the formats a fill of just a gradient fill. Or actually, this is the gradient fill. So I've given it a gradient fill based on these 2 colors. Relatively simple here. And then we're going to show those data labels. I want to show the data labels. We can take a look inside here. And we're going to show them the leader lines we can if we want to, but we don't need that in this case. And I want to show the values. If we're going to show the category names, we could be too much, so we don't need that. So just the values alone, and then I just formatted those. So that's pretty much just a bar graph for that. Relatively simple on that. Taking a look, let's bring our pivot. We're going to be moving over a lot. Let's drag our pivots all the way over here, right next to the dashboard to make it a little bit easier. Next up, we have jobs by area. If we take a look inside the jobs by area in the pivots here, we can see that we have just field settings here. We're going to add that. Inside the field list, we see that we're simply doing, again, we're doing the values based on the order ID. And then this time I want area. So I want to know all the areas. And then we're going to do a count. This time we're doing a count reverse order. So we're sorting smallest to largest. This time, jobs by area. So if we look inside our dashboard here on the left, what we have is jobs by area. I want this particular one to show a donut. So I've created a donut. How do we do that? Well, if we take a look at this one, right, and we decide we want to insert, and what kind of insert? I want to insert a chart. So let's take a look into the charts. And we can see we've got donut chart here. So I've done a donut chart based on this. And if we were going to do the donut chart, we just give it a specific color. I want a color based on our theme. So something like this color here, and this would do. And then all I want to do is we don't want to hide these. We want to hide these. I don't want to show the field buttons on the chart, so we can remove the field buttons. And that gives you an idea of how we could do that. Customizing this, showing the data labels, right? If we want to show the data labels, adding those data labels here. And we can add the data labels. So that would add those data labels. The rest is simply about a customization. So if we want to customize, we want to show the chart titles, the data label, or the legend, we can do that. If I want to show the legend based on the top or bottom, I can show it on the bottom. Then it's just simply customizing. So let's go back into, now that we see how we created the basic one, back into the dashboard here. What I want to do is I want to make sure that the formatting of that, I don't want any shape fill on the main shape, right? No fill on that. Let's drop this down here just while we're doing the formats, right? So we don't want any fill on that, no fill on that. And also, let's click on this one here. This is the one I don't want to fill on. There we go. So keeping that shape fill. And then what I want to do is, of course, we want to show header. I'm going to add all the headers are simply using the bold and italicized, giving them the color. I'm going to show the legend on the left side, giving that very specific, and then making sure that our formats are based on this. So we can give it that different color. If we were to change the color of that, we could change the color to a darker green, something a little bit more closer to the theme. We could also decide if we want to change these, we could, but I've given it just a little bit of a light green so it shows the numbers a little bit more. We can increase the font if we want the bigger numbers to show up here. So just customizing that and making sure that there's no background. Each one is based on a background of just a shape. So again, I've added this shape here and added a background, a simple shape with that. So, and then also if you notice this shape is in two parts, right? There's a picture on this. This one's filled with a picture. And then it's based on the transparency. So I've given a little bit of transparency on that. So that's all I've done with that, just to give it a little bit of a look. Relatively simple. So we got jobs by area, jobs by status, and now we have jobs by month. If we take a look back in our pivot tables here, I've got a new pivot table here. In this particular pivot table, let's bring this up again. We see that we have the scheduled date and years in the rows, and we have the counting on the order. So I want to know how many jobs per month that in this pivot table, and we've created a line chart based on that. So inserting a line chart would do just that for us. Line chart. Just a line chart. And that's pretty much it. The rest is simply just customization, kind of some basic customizations on that. So it's a very, very basic dashboard, but just kind of gives it a nice look and gives the important. Okay, lastly, we have the jobs by technician, right? So the jobs by technician here, relatively simple. Again, another bar chart here we have here. Going inside the pivot tables, all the way on the right here, we have jobs by technician here. Again, sorting this one, I'm doing a reverse sort, right? I want the smallest, right? 8, actually, we're going to do this here. This is the sort here. Sorting here, the smallest to the largest, right? I want to make sure when I do the smallest to largest and on the pivot chart, on the bar chart, it's going to show in reverse, right? So when we do smallest to largest, it then shows the largest to smallest when we create the data for that. We're going to show the names and just give it some color and no background. Relatively simple on that. Now, if you'll notice also that we have some slicers set up for that. And these slicers are going to be connected to all the data. So if we take a look inside, like if you want to add a slicer, simply click here, insert, right? We can insert a slicer if we want to right here, clicking that slicer. And what do we want to do? Well, of course, this would be jobs by technician. So we have a lot of slicers. We can base it on the insert order ID or insert item name, just insert that. So we can insert a slicer if we want a specific job. Obviously, we wouldn't want it on the job name, but we can do that. So we want to make sure that our connect, let's insert a slicer that makes a little more sense. So we don't need that. Okay, so let's go click here and then we'll insert maybe a slicer based on the technician or based on the area. We can do that. that. So if we enter a slicer here, and we want to say based on the, let's say the status would be a nice one, because that's going to enter the status here. So we have the statuses here on there. So we shrink that up. We want a single column, right? No slicer. I want a single column, just one column on that. And also what I want to do is give it a specific format, right? I've got one here on the slicers. And if we scroll up here, I've got a customized one right here. This one's customized here. So we can bring it down here. Now keep that in mind that when we have slicers based on the same data, what we want to do is we want to click on report connections. And I want to make sure that these slicers are based on all of the reports, right? All the reports that we've created. This pivot table one was just the sample that we just created. So jobs by area, jobs by status, jobs by tech, jobs, all of them, so that since it's all the same data. This way, once they're all connected, and then I've placed one slicer here based on the status, one slicer here based on the area, and another slice on here based on the years. So that way, since they're all connected to the same data, let's take another look inside that report connections. We see that they've all been selected here, all the ones here, except the sample that I just created. So all 4 of those connections. This way, when I change it, all the data gets changed, right? Based on the selection of the slicer, everything changes based on that. Or I can clear the filter. And the same thing, maybe I only want to show pending or invoiced or scheduled, just on a very simple type. So we can only show those very much, or clearing the filter. So now we have statuses based on all that information, or maybe I only want to show a single year. So that's all. And then I just added some pictures and things. So that's pretty much it for the dashboard. Relatively simple because we're using the same data, not a whole lot of tricky things going on there. Okay, lastly is our home screen. Our home screen lets everything know. All I've done is created screenshots of the sample and created these little shapes, relatively easy, and then just group them in. And the key is to name these, right? I want to make sure that the names of these individual shapes are simply the names of the screen. So if we take a look at this one's called admin. This one else is called admin too, right? So if we take a look at this, it's called admin. This one's called customers. So if I name the shapes the same as the sheet, when I click on that, I can go directly to the sheet. I've also got another macro here. This particular macro is called home. So this, if we go to format the macro, sign the macro, we see it's called menu go home. So I've got 2 macros that are going to help us with that. So going into there, and we have application macros, menu go to sheet and menu go to home. So we can use a single macro for every single time we click it, right? All we need to do is determine the sheet name, which is going to be the same as the shape name. Notice the name of the shape is also the same as the text box. The text box both have the same names, right? We go into the selection pane, right? We see work orders and work orders. We see service items and service items. This same name of the sheet. So a single macro, all we need to use is determine what is the name of the shape that called it. If I know the name of the shape, it is the same name as the sheet, we can simply use that inside the macro. So go to sheet does that. Application, sheets application caller, activate. This is the name of the sheet and also the name of the shape that called it. We can activate that and we can turn on application scriptability too. That's going to refresh things. So when I click here, it's going to go directly to admin. Now the second one is that home button. If I want to go to that home, that's even easier, right? And that's the next macro here. Simply home activate. That is it. And then this is for the status color, admin set status color, all we're going to be doing, and that's the simple macro. Once we've selected here, all I need to do is I want to know change the color. If I want to change that color, simply the selected cell is going to change the background color. So it's the macro called set status color, and it's going to take the color of the shape. This is the name of the shape that we've called it. It's going to take that color, it's going to put it inside the cell color, and then we're going to hide that. And that's it. The browse for text folder is simply easy, just browsing. That is it. That is all we've had. We've taken care of the admin settings. We've shown you how to create colors, different days, different named ranges in a folder. And of course, inside our dashboard, we show you how to create slicers and different pivot tables and a nice looking little simple dashboard with no code. In the work orders, we showed you how to save new work orders, load, filter work orders. We would also have to save new customers and update existing customers and create this really, really cool work order in which we can print out, automatically link to the original data. And then the best of all, this incredible map dashboard where we can automatically map any types of jobs simply based on the top and location. And we can use any type of background. And of course, the unnapped jobs, which will always show up on the left side, and the full navigation along with filtering based on types. It's been an incredible training. Thank you so much for joining us for the field service business manager. If you do want to support this channel, few ways to do that. Don't forget to subscribe. Click on the notification icon bell. Click any of the links below. We got some great content, great resources, great products, great courses to help you become the master Excel application developer and turn your skills into passive income. All right. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.